Welcome back to a bit of a different video today. We are going to get into my reaction to the overlap fan debate, and the reason I've sort of come to this is there was a lot of not speculation, there was a lot of sort of controversy online. It's not just about this video, it's just in the past people believe that in the overlap maybe we don't always get the best representation. I don't necessarily agree or disagree. I actually think that every single person that goes on there does a purpose for the show, right? They're either providing entertainment, they're providing insight, they're providing one thing or another. The reason I wanted to do this today is just to give my reactions, what I would respond to these questions with, and sort of react through it with you. I thought it'd be a good idea to maybe do this every time there's an overlap fan debate until we manage to get on there ourselves. And then I can try and start to speak about what I think in terms of how everything's sort of being perceived within the fan base and what is happening. So, without further ado, let's get into the video. I'm going to put these headphones on so we can listen to what. So this one today is Rory Jennings. So I'll sort of let it play, go through the questions that they said, give my answers, and then we'll let it play again. So we'll play a little bit now.
Right, Rory, let's get to Chelsea. I must say, they've surprised me a lot. I think especially in the away games. Like, you know them type of results where you haven't watched the game and then someone tells you, like, Wolves away, and you go, wow. And then West Ham was pretty similar, where you're thinking, well, you know, it feels like a really big result, because I just didn't have you anywhere near the top four at the start of the season. I thought you could really challenge for it, but it looks like now I think you could.
Yeah, I think you're onto something. It's a very interesting experiment, almost, what's going on at Chelsea. Like, I wasn't particularly into Enzo Maresca, and now we've got to a stage where, aside from the opening day against Man City where we got beat, we're unbeaten. And in principle, that sounds great. You mentioned the away games, you talk about that statement result at Molineux, you look at the very good result of West Ham United, and again, you start thinking, is something going on? But as soon as you look slightly beneath the surface, so for example, the teams that we haven't lost to, they're all in the bottom 8. It's not quite what it looks like, I don't think.
You'd have lost those games last season.
That's possible.
I think that's the first key point that's mentioned, is that we'd have lost those games last season. And to a degree, I agree. West Ham away, not an easy game for Chelsea. We haven't won there in a while, and we dispatched them really well. Bournemouth, a game where we played really poorly, and we come through with a win. What other games are we going to... Even, I think they're about to speak about the City game, so I'll let it play a little bit more, because that's one I really want to touch on a little bit.
That's possible, but...
Find the reserve in you. Army Reserve sponsors Sky Sports News.
It doesn't feel as good as it looks, I think.
You still think there's still... Yeah, it's a little bit early to sort.
Yeah, so West Ham United, look, Chelsea and West Ham have a huge rivalry. It's a big result for us. We have a terrible record going over to that ground. They've lost 3 games at home for the first time in their history, and we're part of that. But I just wonder quite how much of a statement it is.
I think what the results have done is they've almost just calmed the off-the-field talk as much. It just because it just felt like.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's something you have to sort of echo with what Carragher's saying here, because it is 100% true. The off-the-field stuff, or the on-the-field stuff, has really quietened that storm, and I think that's really important for Maresca to be able to build something for the future. And I think the fact that we've been able to do that so early on in Maresca's reign is going to be important for how the rest of the season sort of progresses. So that is an interesting one, and I'm glad that Carragher's picked up on that.
Like Chelsea were a topical every time we was on TV. We were talking about Chelsea, and it was more the off-the-field stuff. And I think results just helped that massively in terms of just calming everything down. I actually think Maresca spoke quite well in the press conference.
Again, I wouldn't be interrupting him like this during the actual thing, but he absolutely has spoke well in all the press conferences. He has given insight to every decision he makes. He lets people know things, like he doesn't beat around the bush in his press conferences, and I think it's really refreshing for fans because they can sort of understand where he's coming from, and even if a decision is wrong, at least you know the thought process behind it. And I say wrong, broadly speaking, but he's been really good in press conferences, very much sort of like Tuchel-esque back in the day, and we haven't had that since Tuchel, so it's really sort of refreshing to see.
at times. He's had difficult situations. Raheem Sterling early on the season, I think he explained something really well about how many players he had and who was going to play in each position and where he was going to do that. But when you actually look at the squad goals, you actually see there was a game, I don't know what it was. I watched Chelsea maybe a week or two ago. It was Bournemouth.
Yeah.
And
They played us off the park. They played us off the park.
Listen, you were lucky to win it, but that can happen. But the thing that made me think, the players you were bringing on sub, it was like they were like players who should be. Now, I don't know further down the line if that's going to be a problem, because I think that quality of player on the bench can be a problem. But it was like Felix come on, Neto came on. You're thinking, and it was,
again, very good point to make. Yes, there could be implications further down the line. I think Nkunku is one of those ones that we're starting to see a little bit now, where he's hitting a really good vein of form in terms of off the bench. He's scoring goals, he's adding assists, maybe not assists, but he's adding chances to the game, whether it's on the bench or whether he's starting in sort of the cup and European fixtures. So it's important to realise that the squad quality is so high and they're all pushing each other really well at the minute. And I think it's getting the best out of everybody. But could there be a tipping point where a few players are a bit disgruntled? Yes. And that will be another thing that we can judge on how Maresca deals with that. Because I feel like he's quite good at motivating a big group of players, or at least the group that he's got, and challenging them to improve and better and beat their sort of competitors to the side. It feels like, I think it was something said for the Conference League that Mudryk and was it Dewsbury Hall maybe, that they have to earn their spot and this is their chance to prove that they deserve more and more minutes. So I really like that aspect of the squad. Let's see how it sort of progresses over the next year or so, though.
it's like, wow.
They have got, because when we did the first one, we were saying Maresca's going to be the first one gone. And like James.
Just really quickly, I find that hilarious personally, but I understand it because I get that they're coming from a perspective of they've seen Chelsea fire a lot of managers. But I think if you just took a deeper look into what we was hiring and why Poch had left, I think a lot of people still have that sort of like tainted view of how Poch was sacked or mutually left the club because he didn't work within the system that we were making. And I think Rory's even going to touch on something to do with Maresca being sort of like a puppet, but I don't agree with that. But I think that Maresca just fits the overall ethos of what we're trying to build, whereas Poch never really did. He was always just sort of a bridging the gap type.
Jamie says, I think these results have almost calmed things down a bit for him. And there is you look at the squad, there's a lot of talent.
There's a lot of really good players.
Just a little bit worried about the centre forward, to be honest, but again, did he score two?
Yeah, we've scored four now. Like Nicholas Jackson really is finding form.
I'm worried about the keeper a little bit.
I am. I don't think he's particularly good. I think we've got 7 keepers at the club, and none of them are any good. But he had the
it's
game.
Like you say about the fixtures. I think you won't be able to judge Chelsea.
Just in terms of the goalkeeper and striker situation, I've touched on it in a few of my videos recently. I think the striker situation, Jackson's a really good, and he's really hitting his form, and he's giving us exactly what we know Jackson's going to give us. Yes, I do still think we need a box dominator, and I keep sort of touching on that, especially when you're playing against low blocks, when chances aren't going to be they're going to be more scarce, and you have to put them away. And I think that is still a profile we lack. So I agree to an extent, but I still also really like Jackson. And in terms of the goalkeeper, I think that's a completely fair evaluation. I still don't think there is an absolute number one out-and-out starter. I think Sanchez has done okay this season. I think Jorgensen's looked okay when he's claiming in games, but he has his moments with parrying shots. And then you got quite a few youngsters that we're going to see how they develop, especially someone like Penders. So let's see on that. But I can't massively disagree with those two positions. It's just the striker has a little bit more context to it.
Until we get into November, December, then you get a better idea.
When you look at the fixtures and the points that we've accrued and the even the run that we're on, aside from Man City, who beat us opening day at Stamford Bridge, they're all games that you would expect us to win against teams that are struggling. Now there is something.
City beat you really well as well.
Pardon?
City beat you comfortably. Really
we couldn't get a ball. Kovacic driving through.
Now this is the bit I wanted to talk about because I really don't know what game they're talking about here, because if you watched Chelsea versus City, And fair enough, like each to their own. If they had the view, if they thought that we weren't in that game, okay. But I just completely disagree because I think, yes, they won 2-0, but the quality was there. We held the ball in their half. We dominated patches of the game. We had better field tilt and territory than them, which again, for some people, that's just a buzz term that means nothing. But that's something I wanted to see from this Maresca side. Can we dominate a City or an Arsenal, even if it's for patches in a game, not the whole game at this stage? This is early on in his tenure. And we did that. Yes, they didn't have a few players. Rodri wasn't playing. Foden wasn't playing. And I understand it's still a loss. But that gap was never going to be bridged so quickly. And I think that there was a lot of positives in that game. And to say that we were completely outclassed and they easily brushed us aside, I just completely disagree with that notion. And again, if you want to go back to my review at the start of the season for that Chelsea v Man City game, I'm pretty sure I'd have touched on it there. I actually thought there was a lot of positives in that games, and I think we played really well. So that is something I just wanted to sort of nip in the bud from my end. Fair enough to everybody that disagrees. You're all welcome to your opinion, but that's how I feel on it. And I would have. This is the part of the overlap episode, this one, that I would have sort of bit back a little bit with, and not bit back in a rude way, but I would have sort of tested and gone against that idea because I disagree with that. But let's see.
Through the heart of our midfield. It was almost symbolic, wasn't it? Kovacic left. We spent all this money, £250 million on 2 midfielders, and it's Kovacic who drives through the heart of the midfield. But I do think there's something in what Chloe said, where those games last season would have been defeats. So perhaps.
But what was the feeling with the Chelsea supporters in that sort of moving on from Pochettino? I know there's always that Tottenham thing there in the back of your mind, but the way the season finished and Maresca coming in, is it still?
Yeah, I think looking back, I was never a particular disciple of Mauricio Pochettino. He felt.
I remember your interview after the Carabao Cup final.
Yeah, he felt far too Tottenham for me, and I don't think he should have ever been given the job. But the fact that he was given the job, he found a winning formula. Towards the end of last season, we went on a really good run. We played some beautiful football. We battered West Ham at home, battered Tottenham, battered Everton, and it was good. The football was being played was really good. And then they sacked him, and the reason they sacked him was principle. Trevor Chalobah came into the team. He obviously was the best centre half at the club. They insisted on getting rid of him. Pochettino was a man of principle. He said, no. Conor Gallagher, he's gone off to Atletico Madrid to play for Simeone in the Champions League while we're in the Conference League with a Championship manager in Maresca. Pochettino went up massively in my estimation because he was true to his principle, whereas Maresca's come in and effectively he's done everything that the board and the ownership of the club want him to do.
Rory, cheer up.
And I think that's pretty much it for that section. So I'm going to take these headphones off just so I don't hear myself talking, because I can hear myself in my ears there. But I think the best way to sort of summarize the ending of that for me is I understand where you're coming from, because yes, Pochettino didn't fall on his sword. He wanted to keep Gallagher and he kept him in the team. He wanted Chalobah, came into the team, and yeah, he was one of the best. I think he probably was the best centre back last season. But to say Maresca is almost just doing everything they want, I don't think is completely true, because I do believe that Maresca, he just fits the ethos of what the owners are trying to do, whereas Poch didn't. So whilst it looks like Poch was this really brave character, which again he was, like he did stick to his principles, and you have to give him credit for that. I was never overly aggressive on Poch. Like I still think there's good things that he did in his time there. That are still helping us now in terms of building a platform for us to succeed as we are right now. But I do think that it's not as simple as Maresca's just following orders. I think he does necessarily agree with a lot of the orders that are sort of being taken at the club, because what he's trying to build in his principles of football and what he wants in his squad is quite similar to what the sporting directors were building anyway. And I sort of said this throughout last season. When you get a manager in that is with the same ideas and they agree with what we're doing, then it's all going to start to look a little bit more simple and a little bit more, everything will just slightly come together that tiny bit more. It's like putting the last bits of the puzzle into the jigsaw, right? The last little pieces in. And I think that you saw that this season with a few of the decisions, right? Chilwell, for example, I don't think that's, yes, he's come back into the squad. But he's not. I don't think he would have played under Maresca either way. I think Maresca is far more he doesn't suit Maresca's style of play. But some people will see that as sort of politics of him being dropped because he needs to be sold and he's on high wages. I don't agree with that. I think that either way, he was going to struggle under Maresca. Would he have used Gallagher? Possibly as a number 8. I think there's an argument to be made that Gallagher over Dewsbury Hall if finance wasn't a part. Same with Chalobah. I do actually think Chalobah could have played quite a big part in this team. So those ones, I can see what you mean, because yes, there is always going to be the hierarchy that has that final say and control. I think those 2 players particularly could have been of use. That's not to say Gallagher would have been starting every game though either. He would have had to have been sort of willing to have that squad role, because I still believe Enzo Fernandez, Lavia and Casado would have all started ahead of him. And then, of course, you've still got the likes of Palmer, who's coming central, and I still think that would have happened because it makes more sense for the balance of the team, yada, yada, yada. So, overall, I understand where they come from with that sort of idea. But like I say, I think Maresca has made quite a few big decisions himself. And I think that is largely due to the sort of agreement between the sporting directors and him of what they're trying to do and what they're trying to build as a squad. So, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Let me know if you want me to do it in a different way, if I spoke too much, too little, if you'd like me to pause sort of less or more, if you'd like me to play through sort of the whole segment and then give my reactions. Let me know what you think's best for this style of video, because all the support and all the sort of feedback really does help me to really refine these videos and make them as best I can. Eventually, we're going to get ourselves on the overlap and we're going to have these sort of rebuttals with Jamie, with Scholesy, and we're going to let them know what I think about Chelsea, because I don't feel like I'm being too positive either. I think I'm giving both ends of the stick. And again, I'm more than happy in the comments if you think that I'm going far one way or far the other way, for you to sort of call me out on it. Because I feel like I'm being very sort of measured with those responses. So do let me know. As I always say, please do drop a like. It really does help the channel. Really appreciate all the support and feedback lately. Let me know if you want to see this again for the next Overlap fan debate, and I'll see you guys next time.